Going into the American election, I wanted to ask about China. Because, again, my mate Trevor was, every now and then we have these conversations with our mates that remind us about, oh, that's right, that's the main game, right? So, yes, accountability for Victoria, very important. The other main game is China, right? Accountability for where this thing got out of control, accountability for China on its expansionist areas where it's the World Health Organization, the human rights abuses, the Uyghurs, you name it, right? So who's actually going to push back harder when it comes to China? Now, I'm going to assume that all of us are going to say Trump, but what are the dangers of what Biden might bring to this? So, James McGrath, I'll start with you, then we'll finish off with you, James Patterson. But who do you think is going to be better on China, and why does that matter for Australia?
Trump is going to be better. It's because China is a bully, and they are the greatest threat to the rules-based order that the world is seeing at the moment. And Trump, I don't want to call Trump a bully, but he's what I call a very exuberant and very strong character. And he knows when you deal with bullies, you don't give them foot rubs, you don't give them sort of shoulder massages, you've got to stand up to them. And that's why having Trump rather than Biden isn't a foreign affairs hawk. He's like a foreign affairs budgerigar. He's just a Tweety bird. He's just going to tweet away and want to be loved. Trump will stand up to China. And that is better for us here in Australia because we need to make sure there is a coalition of the willing to stand up against China. And we need to make sure we've got a strong president in the White House to help us with that because we can't do it by ourselves. We need other people standing shoulder to shoulder with us.
Yeah, I mean, again, Liz, this scenario where, for me, my concern about Biden and China is that this is a guy who's going to come into the office on some levels wanting to do what Obama did in 2008, right? Win the Nobel Peace Prize for not being George W. Bush. Mm-hmm. So this bloke is going to, I'll remove the tariffs as a way of reconnecting the relationship with China. But of course, it's not just about the tariffs. It's about the intellectual property stuff. It's about how China has grown in the international arena. It's about their wolf diplomacy that means every single consulate and every single embassy isn't silent anymore. It's involved in everything from tweets to universities to this conversation right now. I don't think Biden, in his want to reconnect the world, is going to simultaneously be able to hold China up.
No, Trump is China's worst nightmare. Of course, they'd love someone like Biden, who's more softly spoken, diplomatic.
Wants to manage the relationship.
And in Biden's case, senile. But Trump, they're scared of, with good reason. This guy is not scared of the bully, pushes back on them, whether it's trade or otherwise. Was listening to a FBI director's big address just 2 weeks ago and what he was saying about China and what they're up to, giving all these examples, not just in the cyber warfare space, but stealing intellectual property, etc., and so on. And he was saying it's come to such a point that I'm going to share more in this address than the FBI ever has about the threat that China is to us. And if that's what they are to the US, that's what they are to the rest of the world. America being our biggest ally in these things, absolutely we want Trump to remain leader of the free world right now.
Well, and also, James, while it's self-evident to most people that are watching us, Huawei, right, as the example. The UK was going to dance a little bit and then goes, no. Second thoughts, absolutely not. That in part was because of the lobbying of Pompeo, because of the muscular foreign policy of Trump. Do you have concerns about a Biden presidency in relation to the China of 2021 as opposed to 2008?
Well, the good news, Paul, for those of us who are sceptical of the Chinese Communist Party and want to see a strong and free America standing up to China and holding them to account for their behaviour, is that at the moment in America, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are competing to convince the American people that each of them will be tougher than the other on China, that the other is in fact soft on China. That's a lot of progress from the Bush era, from the Obama era, where both administrations had a policy of accommodation and engagement with China that let them get away with far too much. And particularly in the latter half of the Obama administration, the militarisation of the South China Sea, which has been a huge strategic blow to Australia and the West, that was allowed to happen in a different era. No president in this new era would be allowed to get away with that. They'd be murdered by the American people politically for having done that. So we can all at least take some comfort that whatever the outcome of the election, there's a new consensus in Washington, D.C., in a city that doesn't have much consensus on the CCP.
Well, that's quite diplomatic of you, Senator. Here, I hear you as I expecting sort of this chapter and verse. Look, I will say though about Trump and China, about the concern that I have over the next 4 years is that if he's re-elected, and I obviously hope that he does, is that if he steps back from the strong role America has played in lots of international institutions. I must say a lesson learnt from me over the past 4 years is that if you step back from things like trying to have a strong role in the UN, guess who's going to replace you? It's going to be China, all right? So there are certain forums where you have to stand up and it can't just be at the cash register. There has to be these other forums as well. So I would hope that not going for re-election, there would be a little bit of a calibration there. So we'll see what happens in the next little while.